Chapter 225. After the Black Iron Sword essence was completely cultivated, the characteristics of the Black Iron Sword pattern were fully activated. At this moment, Li Fuchen felt that his body was much heavier, and at the same time, his body felt indestructible. Of course, Li Fuchen's bone marrow wasn't 5 times heavier. The human body was different from an inanimate object and couldn't be generalized. True spirit revolved, hundreds of Black Iron Sword chi lined up in the void, the imposing manner, very terrifying. Li Fuchen estimated that the 10,000 swords return to origin cultivation to small accomplishment is like this. Of course, 10,000 swords return to origin sword chi, this is a bit difficult to compare. The Black Iron Sword essence contains sharpness, weight, toughness, chi condensation and chi conduction. The first 3 focus on the bone marrow itself, while the last 2 focus on chi. It can be said to be a dual cultivation, which isn't something the sect origin swords can compare with. The sect origin swords was a pure offensive type secret technique. Its only use was to kill. But the Black Iron Sword essence wasn't just for killing. Even though he had cultivated the Black Iron Sword essence, Li Fuchen didn't give up on growing stronger. Be it the mystical dragon secret technique, primary clear hand, or the sword essence secret technique, they were all additional strength. Additional strength was still strength, but it wasn't enough for the martial artist to have any achievements on the martial Dao. Only one's own cultivation level and martial arts rank were true strength, which allowed the martial artist to have some achievements on the martial Dao. It is time to experience the Star Road hidden domain. Li Fuchen took out the star stone and crushed it. An azure blue light blossomed and enveloped Li Fuchen. It then suddenly collapsed and shrank, finally condensing into a point and vanishing. This was a vast starry sky. There were countless stars above and below. In the starry sky, there was a black crystal path that was blooming with starlight, extending into the depths of the starry sky. At the starting point of the black crystal path was a floating island. An azure blue light appeared and a figure landed. This is the Star Road hidden domain? Looking into the distance, Li Fuchen couldn't help but take a deep cold breath. No wonder the Star Road hidden domain was the most mystical place in the East Unicorn continent. Just the starry sky scene was enough to stun anyone, not to mention the black crystal path that was laid out in the starry sky. Perhaps it is just an illusion. Even though he could see countless stars, Li Fuchen didn't think that this was really the starry sky and might just be an illusion. Of course, even if it was an illusion, this Star Road hidden domain was still the most mystical place in the East Unicorn continent. After all, this illusion was too realistic, and it brought about an endless impact. Taking a deep breath, Li Fuchen walked on the black crystal path. The moment he stepped forward, a heavy pressure descended upon him. This pressure not only affected his body, but also his spirit. Is this the aura of the Star Road? The Star Road chi field was similar to an imposing manor, containing the double oppression of the soul and aura. Only those with greater potential would be able to go further on the path to stardom. This was mainly because the stronger one's potential was, the stronger one's willpower would be. The stronger one's willpower was, the easier it would be to resist the pressure of the Star Road's chi field. Just like when Li Fuchen was at the 7th level of the Origin Realm, he was able to withstand the chi presence of the Liao clan's 2nd level Heaven Realm martial artist and inner sect elder, Liao Tianyun. If it was any other 7th level Origin Realm martial artist, they would have been severely injured by the chi presence. Of course, Liao Tianyun didn't think of killing Li Fuchen, he just wanted to cripple Li Fuchen. If he burst out with his full strength, it was unknown if Li Fuchen could withstand it. However, other than willpower, one's aura was also very important. And aura was closely related to one's cultivation level. For someone who didn't have as much potential as you, but had a much higher cultivation level, he might be able to go further than you. In addition, chi amplification techniques like the mystical dragon secret technique could also increase one's chi presence. Li Fuchen was now at the 3rd level of the Earth Realm. Activating the mystical dragon secret technique was equivalent to the 4th or 5th level of the Earth Realm. With an extremely strong willpower, the Star Road's chi field was like a gentle breeze to Li Fuchen. Li Fuchen walked briskly. Azure Water Sect. Azure Water Grand Hall. Sect Patriarch, the Heaven Fiend sect has put up a bounty for our gold-class direct disciple, Li Fuchen, in the 100 Battle region. They even announced that anyone who can provide accurate information on Li Fuchen will be rewarded with 10 million gold coins. In the Grand Hall, Inner Sect Elder Yu Hua spoke with concern. In the main seat of the Grand Hall, a white-clothed middle-aged man sat there. His name was Ouyang Wendian, the current patriarch of the Azure Water Sect's number 1 clan, Ouyang clan, and also the Azure Water Sect patriarch. For the Azure Water Sect to elect a sect patriarch, one must first look at one's innate potential. Secondly, one must have great talent and strategy. Thirdly, one must obtain the approval of more than half of the supreme elders. As the Azure Water Sect patriarch, Ouyang Wendian's potential when he was young wasn't inferior to the likes of emotionless sword Xuefeng. If not, he wouldn't have been able to sit in this position. Beside Yu Hua, Zhao Wujin spoke. The Heaven Fiend sect is too much of a bully. They don't even put our Azure Water sect in their eyes. If Li Fuchen is captured by them, the consequences will be unimaginable. Our Azure Water sect's prestige will be greatly damaged. Be it for official or personal reasons, he didn't wish for Li Fuchen to be captured by the Heaven Fiend sect. Sect Patriarch, from what I know, the Heaven Fiend sect's young master, Li Wuxia, is dead. This matter is most likely related to Li Fuchen. It is better to investigate clearly before contending with the Heaven Fiend sect. If not, the Heaven Fiend sect will go crazy. An inner sect elder objected. This person was the Liao clan's founder, Liao Haiwang. Zhao Wujin glared at the opposition. Liao Haiwang, if the sect can't even protect a gold-class direct disciple, then what's the point of existence? Back when the Liao clan sent men to pursue Li Fuchen, he asked Yu Hua to help. He also warned the Liao clan that if there was a second time, he wouldn't let the Liao clan off so easily. This was the reason why the Liao clan behaved themselves. Liao Haiwang's expression didn't change. The sect is a whole entity. We cannot easily provoke enemies because of a single individual. If every direct disciple caused trouble outside and needed the sect to take the blame, then the sect would collapse sooner or later. There are plenty of sects in the East Unicorn continent. Do you want to wrestle with every single one of them? Zhao Wujin sneered. Liao Haiwang, don't you forget that Li Fuchen is our Azure Water sect's gold-class direct disciple. He isn't a regular silver-class direct disciple. Any gold-class direct disciple is the future pillar of the Azure Water sect. Losing even one of them would be a huge loss. Liao Haiwang said, there are still plenty of doubts regarding his gold-class direct disciple status. I am just temporarily giving him the status of a gold-class direct disciple. It won't be too late to talk about it when he progresses to the Heaven Realm. For a 1-star bone frame, every realm was a huge obstacle. If they couldn't cross it, then they wouldn't have any hope in this lifetime. But for a 5-star bone frame, as long as they didn't perish, progressing to the Heaven Realm was as easy as eating or drinking. There wasn't any suspense. The innate potential that he displayed has already surpassed Sword Maniac. If he doesn't even dare to take this risk, then he would be too conservative. With his current rate of improvement, the chances of progressing to the Heaven Realm is definitely not small. Zhao Wujin argued with reason. Ouyang Wendian waved his hand, indicating for everyone to be quiet. Clearing his throat, he spoke slowly, informed the Heaven Fiend sect to immediately stop the bounty of our gold-class direct disciple. Otherwise, our Azure Water sect will go all out to capture one of the elite gold-class direct disciples from the Heaven Fiend sect. Forget it. I shall make a trip personally. After thinking about it, Ouyang Wendian decided to personally make a trip to the 100 Battle region. Only Reincarnation Realm martial artists could converse with Reincarnation Realm martial artists. Those below the Reincarnation Realm didn't even have the qualifications to speak. Chapter 226. The Star Road was extremely long and filled with loneliness. While walking on the Star Road, Li Fuchen could feel his own insignificance at all times. As compared to this vast starry sky, the East Unicorn continent was probably just a speck of dust. A dazzling radiance shone. In the starry sky, there was a huge explosion of meteors. One of them brushed past the Star Road. At that moment, Li Fuchen could clearly feel the heat of the meteor, as though it was a giant burning fireball. Is it reality or an illusion? At this moment, Li Fuchen couldn't understand it either. As he continued walking, Li Fuchen finally saw a figure. It was a 27 or 28-year-old youth and was at the third level of the Earth realm, similar to Li Fuchen. He was struggling to walk step by step and his clothes were drenched in sweat. What a strenuous journey! Li Fuchen didn't rejoice in his misfortune. Previously, he didn't have a reference, hence he didn't know how strong the chi field of the Star Road was. Now that he saw how hard it was for the youth and compared it to his own leisurely walk, Li Fuchen confirmed that the stronger one's potential was, the further one could walk on the Star Road. Bang! After walking a few steps, the youth couldn't take it anymore and fell head first onto the ground. In the next moment, the Star Road radiated and the youth was teleported out of the Star Road hidden domain. Not long after, Li Fuchen saw another figure. Without thinking too much, Li Fuchen immediately overtook the youth. Not far ahead of the Star Road, a group of youths were walking together. The youth in the lead had a jade-like face, broad shoulders and long legs. When his eyes opened and closed, there was a sharp and domineering glow. Han Xixiang, you are still the best. You are still fine after walking so far. The youth at the side flattered him. Han Xixiang is one of the Celestial Star 7 from the Celestial Star sect. How can he be immortal? Don't even talk about this small path, he can even pass the first stage with ease. That's right, Han Xixiang is at a disadvantage because of his age. If he had 1 or 2 more years of cultivation, he would be at the pinnacle of the entire youth generation. A few of them flattered him. The entire East Unicorn continent was filled with experts. They might not be considered much, but in the near future, they would also become experts. As for the senior Han that they spoke of, he would become an absolute expert. If they were to build a good relationship now, it would be considered as having some relations in the future. The Han Xixiang that everyone was talking about was called Han Feng and was one of the Celestial Star sects, Celestial 7. He was 23 years old this year and was at the 5th level of the Earth realm. Among the Celestial 7, his innate potential was one of the best. He let out a faint smile. This Star Road hidden domain is indeed mystical. I have always been in seclusion in the sect. If I knew that this place was so mystical, I would have come earlier. If he had come earlier, he might have already advanced to the 6th level of the Earth realm. No, I can't hold on any longer. Elder Brother Han, my name is Lan Guanglong. If there's a chance in the future, I'll treat Elder Brother Han to a meal and a drink. The young man named Lan Guanglong lay on the ground, transformed into a blue light, and disappeared. Seeing this, the rest of the people felt sad. This place was still a distance away from the first stage of the Path of Stars. If they wanted to reach there, it would be extremely difficult. Who is that? He's so fast. He's about to catch up. Suddenly, one of them pointed to the back and exclaimed. Hearing this, everyone turned around to look. A few thousand meters away, a figure was skimming over at lightning speed. His clothes were fluttering and he had an extraordinary aura. Who else could it be but Li Fuchen? Li Fuchen's speed was too fast. If the rest were jogging, then he was sprinting. To be able to sprint meant that the Star Road's chi field didn't have much pressure on him and was far from his limit. It was a known fact that the Star Road's chi field wasn't unchanging. As the distance got further, the Star Road's chi field would gradually increase. Even though the increase was small and couldn't be felt within a short period of time, but sprinting was still rather stressful for most of the people. A single mistake might cause them to give up in advance. Li Fuchen, who was sprinting, indeed didn't feel any pressure. Right now, he had already adapted to the Star Road's chi field. If he were to suddenly leave the Star Road, he might not be able to adapt. 1,000 meters. 800 meters. 500 meters. Li Fuchen was getting closer to Han Feng and the others. Han Feng frowned. As one of the Celestial 7, he assumed that he was in the 2nd tier among the entire East Unicorn continent's youth generation. As for those in the 1st tier, they were either 6-star bone frames or heaven-defying 5-star bone frames. There were very few people in the 1st tier. How many 6-star bone frames could there be in the East Unicorn continent? As for heaven-defying 5-star bone frames, there were even fewer than 6-star bone frames. To be able to be called heaven-defying 5-star bone frames, all of them had horrifying perception. To a certain extent, they were even more terrifying than 6-star bone frames. Han Feng had information on those 6-star bone frames and heaven-defying 5-star bone frames. But he was certain that Li Fuchen wasn't one of them. What's more, Li Fuchen's cultivation was too low and was only at the 3rd level of the Earth realm. He was already so fast at the 3rd level of the Earth realm. This ignited Han Feng's fighting spirit. Everyone, we need to increase our speed too. As he spoke, Han Feng increased his speed. Follow Han Shixiang. The few of them gritted their teeth and increased their speed. Just like that, both parties maintained a distance of 500 meters and sprinted with one at the front and one at the back. Li Fuchen naturally noticed their sudden increase in speed, but he didn't bother and continued to maintain his own pace. He didn't come to the Star Road hidden domain to be competitive, but to test his own limits. He wanted to see how far he could go. Not good, I can't hold on any longer. There was a surge of blue light as one of them vanished from the Star Road. Half an hour later, another person disappeared. At the front, a lone island appeared and it was the location of the first stage. Ultimately, there were only 4 individuals who made it to the first stage. They were Han Feng, his group, and Li Fuchen. The 2 beside Han Feng had already attempted the Star Road and passed the first stage. After all, their cultivation levels weren't low and were either at the 7th or 8th level of the Earth realm. It wasn't too difficult for them to pass the first stage. Of course, as they ran too fast, the 2 of them were panting and had pale complexions. The first stage's roar targets the spirit will. Those with a weak spirit will immediately faint. Han Shixiang, even if this person is able to pass it, he might not be able to endure it. Once he reaches the second segment of the Star Road, his speed will be at least 10-fold slower. One of the youth with a stalwart figure said. Han Feng didn't say anything and began to traverse the lone island. The entire lone island was like a giant demonic beast, bursting out with a shocking roar. Under this roar, the 2 beside Han Feng were trembling and had extremely pale complexions. The roar targeted the spirit will. Their cultivation levels were higher and their spirit will was strengthened. Furthermore, they had been here once and thought that they were mentally prepared. But at this moment, they still felt that they couldn't endure it and it wasn't any inferior compared to the first time. On the contrary, Han Feng's expression was normal. It was obvious that this roar couldn't do anything to him. At the back, Li Fuchen sized up the surroundings curiously. He was observing where the roar came from. Finally, he came to a conclusion. The roar came from the void above the lone island. It felt as though the entire void was roaring. How mystical! Li Fuchen continued to walk and soon passed through the lone island. He is perfectly fine. The stalwart youth had an expression of disbelief. You have some skills. Han Feng let out a faint smile. He wanted to see how far his opponent could go. When he passed through the lone island, there was a formless wave that rose from the lone island. This wave split into 2 and entered the body of Han Feng and Li Fuchen respectively. Chapter 227. With the support of the Star Road energy, my cultivation talent will receive a drastic increase. Not only that, this wave is also cleansing my body of impurities, loosening my bottleneck. Li Fuchen's awareness was extremely powerful. He could now easily feel the bottleneck of the 4th level, 5th level, and even the 6th level of the Earth realm. In the past, he could only see the bottleneck of the next 2 levels. Among the 4 of them, only Han Feng and Li Fuchen received the support of the Star Road energy. The other 2 had already passed the first stage and couldn't receive the support of the Star Road energy unless they could pass the second stage. On the second Star Road, the Star Road's chi field suddenly doubled. Even when Han Feng walked on it, he could feel traces of pressure. As for the 2 beside Han Feng, they had a twisted expression. Still all right. Walking on the second Star Road, Li Fuchen didn't feel much. If the first Star Road's chi field was like a gentle breeze, then the second Star Road would be like a gentle breeze. Whether it was a gentle breeze or a gentle breeze, to a person who was in a hurry, there wasn't any difference. it would at most blow your hair. Without reducing his speed, Li Fuchen began to sprint. So fast. The tall and sturdy youth had an expression of disbelief. The other youth, who was slightly skinny, sneered, "Try to be brave, he will cry later." In the Star Road hidden domain, one must never try to be brave. Maintaining a comfortable pace would allow one to walk further. If one were to shorten the time, they wouldn't be able to walk further and would only tire themselves out. Seeing how fast Li Fuchen was, Han Feng's expression turned cold. He felt that Li Fuchen was doing it on purpose, intentionally trying to embarrass him. Against such people, Han Feng would only use his actions to tell them what was the meaning of asking for humiliation. As long as it isn't those people from the first echelon, Han Feng, have no need to fear anyone. Han Feng didn't even greet the two beside him. With a burst of speed, he instantly overtook Li Fuchen. After a few breaths, Han Feng had left Li Fuchen far behind. Han Shixiang is indeed formidable. To be able to maintain such a fast speed on the second Star Road. This person must be a retard. From what I see, he just wants to show off and embarrass Han Feng. A pity that he picked the wrong target. Let's just run slowly like this. The Star Road has a wide field of vision and there isn't any impurities in the air. Even a few dozen miles away can be seen clearly. Yes, run slowly. Maybe we can catch up to him later. The two of them didn't think highly of Li Fuchen and felt that Li Fuchen was just trying to show off. Of course, it was mainly because they had too much confidence in Han Feng and didn't think that Han Feng would lose to Li Fuchen. Seeing that Han Feng had surpassed him, Li Fuchen didn't mind. His current speed was the most comfortable speed for him and there wasn't any pressure at all. What he had was the enjoyment of the Star Road's chi field cleansing his body and mind. As time elapsed, Li Fuchen's speed didn't decrease. This person has some tricks up his sleeves. He can still maintain this speed until now. The two people at the back had already been thrown more than 10 li away, and their bodies were already covered in sweat, just like ordinary people who had just gone through strenuous exercise. Unfortunately, it's impossible for him to surpass Senior Brother Han. Senior Brother Han is already 7 or 8 miles ahead of him. Why don't we slow down a bit? That way, we'll be able to stay longer on the Star Road and see how far Senior Brother Han can throw him off. At this moment, the two of them had already given up on competing with each other. Since it wasn't possible for them to pass the second stage of the Star Road, and Li Fuchen's potential was indeed much better than them. This was something they had to admit. Gradually, Li Fuchen and Han Feng's figures had already turned into 2 black dots in their eyes. 15 miles. Let's see how you surpass me. Han Feng's mood was much better now, even though he was feeling a trace of fatigue. After letting down his guard, Han Feng's speed had also decreased slightly. After a period of time, it decreased again. Unknowingly, Han Feng's speed had already fallen behind Li Fuchen. 15 miles. 13 miles. 12 miles. 10 miles. When Li Fuchen was 10 miles behind Han Feng, Han Feng's expression was extremely unpleasant. Taking a deep breath, Han Feng suppressed his desire to increase his speed. 9 miles. 7 miles. 5 miles. Seeing that Li Fuchen was already 5 miles away, Han Feng couldn't hold it in any longer. Damn it. Without a choice, Han Feng increased his speed again, which was even faster than before. He was like an afterimage as he flew on the Star Road. After pulling the distance to around 10 miles, Han Feng gradually slowed down. But after a period of time, the distance between the two had shrunk to 5 miles again. Does he not know fatigue? Han Feng's mind was unbalanced. He was like a gambler on the gambling table. At the start he was calm and collected, but now he was mindful, and now he couldn't control his emotions anymore. 4 miles. 3 miles. The distance between the two was constantly shrinking. Panting heavily, Han Feng wanted to increase his speed, but he suddenly realized that he wasn't able to increase his speed by much. The previous sprint had exhausted quite a bit of his energy. Furthermore, the chi field of the Star Road was already extremely strong and to him, it was almost equivalent to a Gale class. I can't carry on like this. A fast speed might allow me to maintain a lead for a moment, but it won't last for long. Once he catches up, I will have to travel at a similar speed as him. Han Feng thought to himself. In just a short moment, Li Fuchen caught up. Han Feng looked at Li Fuchen and his eyes involuntarily contracted. Li Fuchen's body didn't have a trace of sweat. He had a carefree and relaxed look and didn't seem to be fatigued. Maintaining the same speed, Han Feng and Li Fuchen advanced side by side. 100 miles behind, the stalwart youth and the skinny youth were flabbergasted. Li Fuchen actually caught up to Han Feng and maintained the same speed as him. What kind of tempo was this? Puff, puff, puff. Han Feng's breathing was getting heavier and his sweat had gradually drenched his clothes. Beside him, Li Fuchen maintained a clean and tidy appearance. Half a body length. One body length. This was the first time Li Fuchen surpassed Han Feng. Han Feng gritted his teeth and chased after Li Fuchen while maintaining the same speed. 15 minutes. 30 minutes. Han Feng had already used all his energy, but he realized in despair that he couldn't keep up with Li Fuchen's tempo. Impossible. How can I, Han Feng, lose? He must have some artifact on him that allows him to cheat. Han Feng had a sinister expression. When the distance between him and Li Fuchen increased to 10 meters, Han Feng couldn't hold it in anymore. Despicable little b****************************** D, get lost from the Star Road. Han Feng suddenly made his move and immediately used a kill move, which assaulted Li Fuchen with extreme speed. Li Fuchen frowned and instantly burst with speed, which was much faster than Han Feng's previous top speed. Boom! The chi force explosion didn't affect Li Fuchen. I need to leave him far behind in one go. Li Fuchen continued to maintain his high speed. On the Star Road, he didn't wish for any unnecessary fights as it was meaningless. 1 li, 5 li, 10 li, 20 li. In just a short moment, Li Fuchen left Han Feng behind by 10 li. Han Feng had a face of shock and disbelief. He felt as though he was given a ruthless slap in the face. He felt as though he was being teased. Chapter 228. Han Shixiang has been surpassed by him? Over 100 miles away, the duo that had been observing Li Fuchen and Han Feng looked at each other. The Star Road hidden domain had a very good vision. Even if they were over 100 miles away, they would still be able to differentiate between Han Feng and Li Fuchen. When they realized that Li Fuchen had surpassed Han Feng and even forced Han Feng to disregard his reputation and make a move, they were both shocked. Who was Han Feng? He was one of the Celestial Seven. No matter which sect he went to, he would be an elite existence. Only 6-star bone frames and heaven-defying 5-star bone frames could surpass him. Could Li Fuchen be a new heaven-defying 5-star bone frame that popped out? As for a 6-star bone frame, that was impossible. The moment a 6-star bone frame joined the sect, their information would be spread out and it was impossible to conceal it. The second segment of the Star Road was extremely long. The chi field of the Star Road was like a gentle breeze at the start, but gradually turned into a small breeze towards the end. Even Li Fuchen could feel traces of pressure. But this trace of pressure was still very weak and didn't affect Li Fuchen much. 30 miles. 50 miles. Han Feng was already 50 miles away from Li Fuchen. The current him was drenched in sweat. In fact, if he could maintain his own pace and travel, he wouldn't be so tired. But because of his competitive nature, his speed was too fast at the start and he was stimulated by Li Fuchen during the middle segment, which resulted in his poor condition. If he wasn't one of the Celestial Seven, he might have been teleported out of the Star Road hidden domain. Finally, Li Fuchen arrived at the second stage of the Star Road. The second stage of the Star Road was also an isolated island. There was a tall stone statue on the island and the eyes of the stone statue were shut tight. The instant Li Fuchen stepped onto the island, an invisible wave spread out. The stone statue emitted a misty radiance and at the same moment, the stone statue opened its eyes. It was a pair of misty eyes. Buzz. Li Fuchen's spirit was shaken. Illusion technique? Li Fuchen was in deep thoughts. According to the information, the first stage was the Roar of Dreams and the second stage was the Misty Eye. So the Misty Eye was an illusion technique. Illusion techniques were extremely hard to defend against. It was related to one's cultivation level and also unrelated. It was related because the higher one's cultivation level, the stronger one's spirit will. The reason why he said it was unrelated was because if one's cultivation was high but one's willpower was weak, they would still fall for it. Powerful illusion martial artists, even if they were at the earth realm, might be able to cause heaven realm martial artists to fall into an illusion. If one wasn't an illusionary art martial artist, wanting to defeat a heaven realm martial artist with earth realm cultivation was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. If one wasn't a heaven-defying existence, it would be impossible. However, to cultivate illusions, one must first have a naturally strong spirit will. Secondly, one must have the aptitude to cultivate illusions. This aptitude could be an illusion-type bone frame, or it could be born with a unique sense towards illusions. The illusion art released by the stone statue was extremely powerful. It was more than 10 times stronger than the spirit-hidden sects Ghost Girl Yi Hua back in the 100 Herbs hidden domain. It was a pity that Li Fuchen's spirit will was stronger and his awareness was heaven-defying. The stone statue's illusion technique was just a ripple on the surface of a lake to Li Fuchen. She wanted to make him fall into an illusion. Dream on. Passing the stone statue, Li Fuchen saw a towering stone monument. A brush appeared out of nowhere and floated in front of Li Fuchen. Li Fuchen raised his brows. This should be the monument of names and the brush of names. For the first time, those who passed the second stage of the Star Road in one go would be able to leave their mark on the monument of names. This mark had to be completed in one stroke, which was why no one would write their name. And because everyone would write their own mark, leaving their name was undoubtedly a vulgar thing. On the stone tablet, the markings were divided into a few camps. The first camp was high up, and it contained the spirit and willpower of the writer as well as the mystical ripples bestowed by the Star Road's secret realm. The second camp had a lot of markings, and they were densely packed like little tadpoles. The third camp had even more markings, and it was hard to tell how many markings there were. The first camp mark should be left by a 6-star bone frame or a heaven-defying 5-star bone frame. The second camp mark should be left by an elite 5-star bone frame. The third camp mark should be left by a superior 5-star bone frame. As for those dimmed marks, they should already be dead. To be able to pass the second stage of the Star Road in one go, no one was a regular person. A regular 5-star bone frame wouldn't even have the chance to come here on their first try. Only the elite 5-star bone frames would be able to come here on their first try. In Li Fuchen's opinion, Sword Maniac, Sword Tiger, Emotionless Sword, and the others should belong to the second camp. Sword Maniac might be obsessed with the sword and had an exceptional perception, but his bone frame was too low and was only a 4-star bone frame, which was why Sword Maniac belonged to the heaven-defying 4-star bone frame. As for himself, Li Fuchen laughed. He was only a 1-star bone frame. Reaching out his right hand, Li Fuchen grabbed the brush. The moment he held the brush, Li Fuchen felt something unusual about it. This brush gave him a feeling that it was 10-folds more mystical than the Earth-class weapon shard. His awareness wanted to enter it, but an invisible wave obstructed his awareness. This brush's grade is at least Earth-class high tier. Li Fuchen thought to himself. As Li Fuchen held the brush, there was a mystical wave that poured into the brush from the void. Li Fuchen was surprised to find out that he didn't even need to pour in his qi. Thinking about it, it was at least an Earth-class high-tier brush and his qi wasn't able to satisfy it. It was impossible to leave a mark on the monument of names. And the reason why the marks on the monument of names contained such a mystical wave was probably because of the brush of names. After thinking for a moment, Li Fuchen began to write his own mark. The writing was done in the void. The mark that Li Fuchen wrote was a sword, a sharp sword. This sword contained all of Li Fuchen's sword Dao proficiency and his formidable spirit will. The sword mark was completed in one go. The moment it was completed, the sword mark started to glow and automatically flew towards the monument of names. Third camp. Second camp. First camp. Soon enough, this sword mark climbed to the first camp and was imprinted on an empty space. Rumble. The monument of names let out a bright radiance. At the same time, the entire Star Road was slightly shaking, as though something huge had happened. First camp, Li Fuchen raised his brows. After the sword mark was imprinted, a mystical wave that belonged to Li Fuchen's spirit will spread out. It complemented the other marks in the first camp. It stood high above and emitted an aura of supremacy. And Li Fuchen noticed that the marks in the first camp, except for those that were dimmed, the rest of the marks that were glowing were of different sizes. There were more of the smaller marks, and the bigger marks were only 10% of the smaller marks. Li Fuchen's sword mark was impressively big, and it was one of the biggest marks among the big marks. There were a few of the sword marks that weren't convinced and charged at Li Fuchen's sword mark, seemingly trying to suppress it. But Li Fuchen's sword mark only shook a little and immediately sent the sword marks flying back, dispirited and listless. What happened? Han Feng and the other two were panicking and didn't know what happened. Chapter 229. It seems like my potential belongs to the 6-star bone frame class. Furthermore, it is an elite 6-star bone frame. Seeing how incredible his sword mark was, Li Fuchen had a new understanding of his own potential. A 6-star bone frame was considered a monarch-class bone frame in the East Unicorn continent. If a 5-star bone frame had a high chance of breaking through to the Reincarnation realm, then a 6-star bone frame had a high chance of breaking through to the Reincarnation realm. There was even hope of breaking through to the Battle Spirit realm. The existence of a Battle Spirit realm expert was enough to crush any sect, including elite factions like the Celestial Star Sect, Dolin Clan, and Eternal Spring Valley. A Battle Spirit realm expert could proclaim himself as a king in the East Unicorn continent. Those who submitted would prosper while those who opposed would perish. Li Fuchen might only be a 1-star bone frame, but his potential wouldn't lie. As long as he could ensure that he didn't perish, breaking through to the Reincarnation realm wouldn't be difficult. There was even a high chance of breaking through to the Battle Spirit realm. After all, he had an elite 6-star bone frame potential. After breaking through the second stage of the Star Road, Li Fuchen arrived at the third segment of the Star Road. Compared to the second Star Road, the third Star Road's aura doubled. In other words, the aura field of the third star path was 4 times that of the first star path and twice that of the second star path. Standing on the third star road, Li Fuchen felt as though he was being blown by a strong wind, which began to affect his condition. Looks like I'll have to slow down a little. Li Fuchen began to run. Then he kept adjusting his speed. Soon enough, Li Fuchen adjusted the speed to the optimal state, which was almost equivalent to 70% of the second star road. Not long after Li Fuchen left, Han Feng arrived at the second stage of the Star Road. Perhaps it was because of his poor condition, Han Feng instantly fell into the illusion released by the stone statue. It took him a whole hour to get out of the illusion. That was close. Han Feng had a lingering fear. If he were to fight an enemy, this 1 hour would be enough to kill him 1,000 times. Arriving in front of the Monument of Names, Han Feng started scanning the monument. He wanted to know where Li Fuchen left his mark. The third group had too many markings, and Han Feng wasn't foolish enough to think that Li Fuchen's markings were in the third group. In the second camp, Han Feng began to search slowly. There were some similar markings, but Han Feng's intuition told him that none of them were. After a long time, Han Feng's expression turned gloomy as he thought to himself, could he be in the first camp? The first camp consisted of 6-star bone frames and heaven-defying 5-star bone frames. Even if it was him, he would feel a little inferior when facing these people. With an attitude of disbelief, Han Feng started to search among the markings of the first group. When his gaze landed on an extremely large sword mark, Han Feng was completely dumbfounded. This sword mark gave him a feeling that it was similar to Li Fuchen. But this sword mark was so big, how could it be Li Fuchen's? Could he be a heaven-defying 5-star bone frame? That's not right, even a heaven-defying 5-star bone frame wouldn't be this huge, right? The so-called heaven-defying did not mean that it was truly heaven-defying. Instead, it was to reverse the difference in bone frames, allowing a 5-star bone frame to go against a 6-star bone frame. For example, a heaven-defying 3-star bone frame was comparable to a 4-star bone frame. A heaven-defying 4-star bone frame was comparable to a 5-star bone frame. Generally speaking, it was a 1-star difference. If this sword mark really belonged to Li Fuchen, then Li Fuchen's potential wasn't just comparable to a 6-star bone frame, but had surpassed most of the 6-star bone frames and was at the pinnacle of the 6-star bone frames. Han Feng was completely stupefied. Reaching the pinnacle of the 6-star bone frame was something that even his Celestial Star sects, Celestial Star Young Patriarch, couldn't achieve. He had already found Young Patriarch Celestial Star's mark in the first group. Young Patriarch Celestial Star's mark was a simple star pattern, but it was undoubtedly much smaller than the sword mark. Impossible, this is definitely not his mark. I have never crossed hands with him and am not too familiar with his chi presence. What's more, there are quite a few sword marks in the first group and even more sword marks in the second group. These sword marks are all similar and contain sharpness and murderous characteristics. Perhaps his mark is another sword mark. Han Feng subconsciously rejected this possibility as the possibility was too shocking and he couldn't accept it. I, Han Feng, am one of the Celestial Seven and have never tested my own potential. Perhaps my potential is also in the first group. As for him, he must have some artifact that allows him to cheat. Han Feng firmly believed that Li Fuchen had some special artifact on him. The world was huge and there were all sorts of strange things. There would always be something that could deceive the heavens. Picking up the brush, Han Feng began to draw his own mark in the air. His mark was the mark of a maple leaf. The maple leaf mark radiated with light and flew towards the monument of names. The third group. The second group. When arriving at the second group, the maple leaf mark stopped and found an empty spot to brand itself. Seeing the situation, Han Feng suffered a huge blow. His potential was only in the second group and it wasn't even the greatest mark in the second group. There were plenty of marks that were much greater than him. I am unwilling. In fact, before this, he knew his own limits and thought that he was in the second tier. But Li Fuchen's appearance had given birth to some wild hopes in him. A pity that his wild hopes were now shattered. Potential is after all just potential and it doesn't mean everything. I, Han Feng, must break the norm and walk on a heaven-defying path. Han Feng was after all an elite 5-star bone frame and had an extremely strong spirit will. He was just slightly dispirited for a moment before he quickly walked out of his depression. In his Celestial Star sect, there were a few 1-star bone frames who were able to break through to the Earth realm. But he was an elite 5-star bone frame and had hopes of breaking the norm too. Regaining his confidence, Han Feng's eyes turned resolute as he stepped onto the 3rd-star road. Why is the pressure so great? It is at least 2 folds greater than the later stages of the 2nd-star road. Han Feng's body sank as he felt his spirit will distorting. Li Fuchen had already walked far away and didn't know anything about what was happening behind him. Of course, he didn't care to know. His target was in front and the back was just a path that he had walked on. The Star Road hidden domain might be mystical and was the number 1 mystical place in the East Unicorn continent, but the golden amulet was even more mystical. His current cultivation level was still low, but once his cultivation level increased, he would definitely be able to unearth more secrets from the golden amulet. Apart from the golden amulet, his confidence was even firmer. Back then when he suddenly lost his talent, it didn't make him dispirited, but made his spirit will extremely firm. The existence of the golden amulet was like an acquired bone frame. His innate bone frame couldn't be compared to others, but he had an acquired bone frame. What's more, his acquired bone frame could still be upgraded and could continue to rise. There was someone on the 3rd-star road too. Dozens of miles in front of Li Fuchen, a figure was sprinting at a rather fast speed. Li Fuchen fixed his eyes on the figure and thought to himself, it seems like this person is an incredible figure. I wonder if he is a 6-star bone frame or a heaven-defying 5-star bone frame. This person's speed wasn't any slower than Li Fuchen. As compared to the person who competed with him previously, he was much slower. When Li Fuchen noticed the opponent noticed Li Fuchen too. Someone is catching up? Chapter 230. Ignoring the figure in front of him, Li Fuchen maintained his own pace and hurried on his way. After passing the second stage of the Star Road, Li Fuchen's body had more Star Road energy. If the first stage only had one portion of Star Road energy, then the second stage had 2 portions of Star Road energy, making it a total of 3 portions. With 3 portions of Star Road energy added onto Li Fuchen's body, Li Fuchen's 4th level Earth Realm bottleneck had loosened significantly. It was originally steel, but now it was like a brick. Li Fuchen had a feeling that if he spent a little more time, he would be able to progress to the 4th level of the Earth Realm in a short period of time. What kind of concept was the 4th level of the Earth Realm? Now that Li Fuchen had the mystical dragon secret technique and the black iron sword essence, every increase in level would greatly increase his ability. It was simply an explosive increase. By then, passing the 3rd floor of the direct inheritance tower would be as easy as eating and drinking. A few dozen miles wasn't far, but it wasn't near either. Li Fuchen's speed might be faster than his opponent, but it was impossible to catch up in a short period of time. As time elapsed, the chi field of the 3rd Star Road was getting stronger. It started off as a gale class and gradually became a gale class. If a regular person were to travel in a gale, let alone running, it would be difficult for them to even walk. Li Fuchen didn't find it difficult to even walk, but it was indeed strenuous for him to run, causing his speed to decrease. But even though Li Fuchen's speed was decreasing, the figure in front of him was decreasing even faster. When Li Fuchen caught up, the person spoke, "I am Xiahou Shi, a clansman of the Xiahou clan. May I know which sect are you from?" "Xiahou clan? Is it the Daoist clan?" Li Fuchen asked. Xiahou Shi nodded, "Yes. So it is a clansman of the Daoist clan. I am Li Fuchen, a disciple of the Azure Water sect." Li Fuchen didn't need to guess to know that since this person was a clansman of the Daoist clan, he must be one of the Daoist 10 Greats. The Daoist clan might be an elite faction, but it was impossible for a regular clansman to reach the 3rd Star Road. Only the Daoist 10 Greats had this potential. But among the Daoist 10 Greats, there might not be any 6-star bone frames, but there were 2 heaven-defying 5-star bone frames. Xiahou Shi's cultivation was at the 6th level of the Earth Realm. It wasn't a high cultivation level, but it reflected his potential better. Li Fuchen reckoned that he should be one of the 2 heaven-defying 5-star bone frames of the Daoist clan. As a heaven-defying 5-star bone frame and in the same realm, Xiahou Shi was much stronger than emotionless sword Xuefeng. It wasn't impossible for him to instantly kill Xuefeng. Azure Water sect, huh? Xiahou Shi was diligently searching for information regarding the Azure Water sect. After a few blinks of the eye, Xiahou Shi dug out information about the Azure Water sect from his memories. The Azure Water sect was just an ordinary sect. Beside it was a slightly stronger sect called the Heaven Fiend sect. But as compared to the Daoist clan, it was still lacking. So it is a Azure Water sect disciple. It is an honor to meet you. Xiahou Shi laughed heartily with a passionate expression. Why does this person seem so fake? Li Fuchen frowned in his heart. The other party's tones seemed to be very passionate, but Li Fuchen's senses were very sharp. He could tell who was truly passionate and who was faking it. Sensing that Xiahou Shi had an ulterior motive, Li Fuchen exchanged a few polite words with him and didn't say anything else. But Xiahou Shi obviously didn't want to let him go. "Li Xiong, since you are able to come to the 3rd Star Road, you must have some artifacts on you. Why not let me take a look? Don't worry, I, Xiahou Shi, will never speak of it. I, Xiahou Shi, have always been a man of my words. You can rest assured about this." Li Fuchen replied indifferently, "The Star Road hidden domain is so mystical. How can there be any artifacts that can cheat? Xiahou Xiong must be joking." Xiahou Shi replied, "It seems like Li Xiong still doesn't trust me. This isn't good. On the path of the martial Dao, one more friend means one more arm. We should make friends and not be selfish. I believe Li Xiong can understand my words." Li Fuchen frowned. "I don't have any artifacts. Xiahou Xiong can choose not to believe me." "Kiki, seems like Li Xiong really doesn't have any artifacts. Since that is the case, I believe Li Xiong." Xiahou Shi's expression didn't change as he continued, It is truly admirable for Li Xiong to come to the third star road without relying on artifacts. If there is an opportunity, let's have a drink together. I am willing to befriend Li Xiong. Li Fuchen replied in a perfunctory manner, Xiahou Xiong is too polite. Someone is chasing from behind. It seems like the Star Road hidden domain is rather lively today. Xiahou Shi turned around to look. Hearing the statement, Li Fuchen turned around too. Go to hell. Suddenly, Xiahou Shi sent a fist at Li Fuchen. This fist contained resplendent yellow qi and looked extremely ferocious and domineering. It felt like it could destroy a mountain and split rocks. Xiahou Shi naturally didn't have the intention to befriend Li Fuchen. He initially asked which sect Li Fuchen was from because he was afraid that Li Fuchen had a powerful background. If he didn't kill Li Fuchen, he would be in trouble instead. He then asked if Li Fuchen had any artifacts to assist him. If he had the help of artifacts, then it wouldn't be worth mentioning. He could easily kill Li Fuchen and seize the artifacts. If there wasn't any artifacts, then he had to kill Li Fuchen. If a mere third-level Earth Realm martial artist was able to come to the third star road, then he must have the potential of a monarch class. There were plenty of individuals with the potential of a monarch class in the East Unicorn continent, but most of them had already become experts. But there weren't many youths with the potential of a monarch class. To him, it was naturally better to have one less. He used his full strength in this fist and it was very fast. When the fist was executed, a biting cold fist intent locked onto Li Fuchen. With his 6th level Earth Realm cultivation, this fist was enough to instantly kill anyone who wasn't as good as him. What's more, it was a sneak attack. He believed that Li Fuchen was definitely going to die. Grinning sinisterly, Xiahou Shi felt as though he could see the scene of Li Fuchen being penetrated by this fist. This fist struck the air. The yellow fist force was like an enraged dragon that rushed out. The fist intent on it was only at this moment that it burst out completely. Li Fuchen was like a phantom that skimmed to the front. Turning around, Li Fuchen spoke in a cold voice, I knew you would sneak an attack on me. As expected. Xiahou Shi said that there was someone behind him, but from his senses, there wasn't anyone behind him. He pretended to look behind him in order to lower Xiahou Shi's guard. As for why he pretended, it was because he wanted to test his opponent. He wanted to see how good Xiahou Shi's judgment was. Xiahou Shi didn't mind that he didn't kill Li Fuchen in a single fist. He let out an indifferent laugh. Li Xiong sure is cautious. You have been guarding against me from the start. This isn't the way to treat a guest. If I didn't guard against you, I would already be dead. Perhaps I am just joking with Li Xiong. How would you know that I already expected you to dodge and wanted to test your potential? I don't have to trouble you. Farewell. Li Fuchen didn't wish to speak more with Xiahou Shi as there wasn't a need. Of course, he didn't think that Xiahou Shi's personality was sinister and was destined to be a minor character in the future. Future achievements had nothing to do with personality. Some people with cruel personalities could still become Reincarnation realm martial artists. Some people who pretended to be benevolent and righteous could also become Reincarnation realm martial artists. Future achievements were related to martial Dao conviction. As long as one's martial Dao conviction was strong, even a devil could have a glimpse of the great Dao. Hence, in Li Fuchen's eyes, Xiahou Shi was a dangerous character. Such a person could talk and laugh wittily, kill people like flies. Even if his sneak attack didn't succeed, he could still talk and laugh freely. He wasn't a regular character. But while the enemy was crafty, Li Fuchen wasn't a fool either. Chapter 231. With a slight increase in speed, Li Fuchen gradually shook off Xiahou Shi. Xiahou Shi grinned. If I can kill him, it should allow my martial Dao conviction and fate to grow even stronger. Legend has it that killing a prodigy would allow one to steal their fate. This saying couldn't be verified, but many believed it. Xiahou Shi was one of them. In the East Unicorn continent, there were plenty of monarch class potential. If he wanted to reach the top, he had to kill prodigies with extreme potential. If he killed enough, he would eventually surpass those 6-star bone frames and heaven-defying 5-star bone frames, becoming the king of prodigies. The dreadful Star Road Chi field caused Li Fuchen's speed to get slower and slower. If there was a grade of gale, the current Star Road Chi field was like a violent mountain torrent that could blow people off their feet. Those with weak and frail physiques would be blown all over the ground. It was almost impossible for them to travel in a hurry. Resisting against the gale, Li Fuchen jogged. Every step was firm and powerful. Traces of sweat started to soak his clothes. Unknowingly, the fatigued Li Fuchen arrived at the third stage of the Star Road, on the third island. The first stage of the Star Road was the Sound of Roar, the second stage was the Eyes of Mist, and the third stage was the Saber of Will. When the Saber of Will cleaved, those with a weak spirit would immediately faint. It was very straightforward and there was no room for struggle. The moment he stepped on the island, a powerful pressure rushed into the sky and condensed together. In Li Fuchen's spirit sense, there was an obvious saber in the air, an illusory saber. Swish. As the saber cleaved down, Li Fuchen's spirit will violently distorted. In this place, a high cultivation level doesn't seem to matter, it all depends on my spirit will. Li Fuchen thought to himself. The saber of will wasn't enough to deal with him, unless it was doubled in size, then there would be a chance. After resisting the saber of will, Li Fuchen saw the Monument of Names again. Just like the second stage's Monument of Names, the third stage's Monument of Names could only be left behind by those who made it here for the first time. Those who made it here for the second time wouldn't even be able to see the Monument of Names. The third stage's Monument of Names had less than half of the markings. On the second stage's Monument of Names, none of the markings from the third faction appeared here. There were also plenty of markings from the second faction that didn't appear here. Although there were fewer symbols, there were more factions, and they were divided into 5 factions. The first 2 camps were the first camps on the second stage of the Monument of Names, while the last 3 camps were the second camps. In other words, in the third stage, the Monument of Names, the markings were even more detailed. Here, the disparity between geniuses could be seen even more clearly. With the appearance of the Brush of Names, Li Fuchen drew out his sword, mark in the air. The mark of sword formed and flew towards the Monument of Names. 5th, 4th, 5th, 1st. Without any suspense, Li Fuchen's sword, mark flew to the first group. Apart from the darkened marks, there were only a few dozen bright marks. Among them, there were less than 10 of the true youth generation. Perhaps it was because they sensed Li Fuchen's presence. These 10 youthful marks started to attack Li Fuchen's sword, mark. But Li Fuchen's sword, mark wasn't to be trifled with. After a series of attacks, these marks were forced to retreat. Of course, this didn't mean that Li Fuchen's potential surpassed the total of the owners of these marks. It was mainly because Li Fuchen's sword, mark had just been branded and was in the limelight. Furthermore, Li Fuchen himself was still around. The battle only lasted for an instant. An instant later, as Li Fuchen's sword, mark returned to its position, the Monument of Names glowed brightly. At the same time, in the sky above the Star Road that was filled with stars, there were flashes of thunder and flashes of golden lightning. These golden lightning bolts were unbelievably large. In the eyes of everyone on the Star Road, each of them was a few hundred miles or even a few thousand miles. There were plenty of golden lightning bolts that skimmed across the Star Road, and that tyrannical pressure caused everyone to tremble with fear. What happened? Han Feng, who was still struggling on the third Star Road, looked up at the sky full of golden lightning and was flabbergasted. Could it be him again? Impossible. We aren't the only ones who came to the Star Road. There must be others, so it can't be him. Han Feng immediately shook his head and denied this thought. Unlike Han Feng, Xiaohou was certain that it was Li Fuchen. Star Road Anomaly. He actually triggered the Star Road Anomaly. This person deserves to be killed. Xiaohou licked his lips while his eyes flashed with terrifying murderous intent. From what he knew, for the first time to pass the third stage of the Star Road, as long as the mark was branded in the first group, it would definitely trigger the Star Road Anomaly. Which meant to say, Li Fuchen's mark was in the first group. First group? Xiaohou didn't even know if he could be in the first group. But it didn't matter. Potential was still potential and he would snatch it back. With 4 portions of Star Road energy on his body, Li Fuchen's Star Road energy was now at 7 portions. 7 portions of Star Road energy was boundless. Li Fuchen felt that his 5th-level Earth Realm bottleneck had loosened, while the 4th-level Earth Realm bottleneck had a crack. The crack appearing meant that Li Fuchen could break through at any moment. Let's talk about it after I get out. The Star Road was too dangerous and Li Fuchen didn't wish to break through here. To him, even if his cultivation increased by 1 level, it wouldn't be of much help to him when he was on the Star Road. Spirit willpower and cultivation. Li Fuchen's spirit willpower took up too much of a portion, which was why his cultivation wasn't that important, unless he could increase by 2 levels. I wonder how violent the 4th Star Road will be. Li Fuchen looked at the 4th Star Road. This Star Road looked a little different. It was dusky and the void seemed to be distorted, just like a road to hell. To a regular person, it would require courage to step on the 4th Star Road. Not long after Li Fuchen passed the 3rd stage of the Star Road, Xianxia arrived. After resisting the Saber of Will, Xianxia began to leave a mark on the Monument of Names. The mark formed and flew towards the Monument of Names. Xianxia's face was smiling. His mark was impressively branded on the 2nd group and didn't manage to make it to the 1st group. Interesting. Xianxia lifted his head and looked at the 1st group. There were only a few dozen bright marks in the 1st group. One of them was a giant sword mark which attracted Xianxia's attention. Staring at this sword mark, Xianxia reached out his right hand and swiped across his neck. Such a violent chi field of the Star Road. Walking on the 4th Star Road, Li Fuchen felt as though he was walking in a hurricane. Violent winds might be strong, but it wasn't enough to send a person flying. But a hurricane could. A horrific hurricane didn't just send a person flying, it could also snap trees and destroy houses. The intensity of the chi field of the Star Road was 2-fold stronger than the later stages of the 3rd Star Road. It was 8-fold stronger than the later stages of the 1st Star Road. Within the same Star Road, the difference between the earlier and later stages was at least 2 folds. Chapter 232. When Li Fuchen was on the 4th Star Road, the Azure Water Sect Patriarch, Ouyang Wenyin, arrived at the 100 Battle region. The first thing he did was to find the Heaven Fiend Sect's sect leader, Li Xin. Li Xietian, withdraw the arrest warrant for my gold class direct disciple, Li Fuchen. I shall treat it as if nothing happened. Ouyang Wendian said. Li Xietian laughed coldly. You killed my son Li Wuxia? A debt of blood must be paid in blood. Ouyang Wendian, you better not interfere in this matter, because you cannot bear this responsibility. Did you personally witness Li Fuchen killing Li Wuxia? Ouyang Wendian asked. Li Xietian's expression froze for a moment before he sneered. So what if I didn't see it with my own eyes? As long as there is suspicion, I will not let him go. Don't worry, I will not kill him on the spot. I will bring him back to the Heaven Fiend sect and interrogate him personally. If it is not him, I will naturally not touch a single hair on his head. Ouyang Wendian said, after entering your Heaven Fiend sect, even if you don't die, you will still lose a layer of skin. Li Xietian, I am not going to talk nonsense with you. If you didn't personally witness Li Fuchen killing Li Wuxia, then withdraw the wanted order. Otherwise, if your Heaven Fiend sect does what you did, my Azure Water sect will do the same. If you put a wanted order for my Azure Water sect's gold class direct disciple, I will also put a wanted order for your Heaven Fiend sect's gold class direct disciple, unless your Heaven Fiend sect's gold class direct disciple doesn't come out. Li Xietian squinted his eyes. Ouyang Wenyin, you are deliberately making life difficult for me. Do you know how painful it is to lose a son? If you knew this would happen, why did you let your son out? Wouldn't it be better to lock him up in the Heaven Fiend sect for life? Hearing this, Li Xietian's heart flashed with hatred and killing intent. Indeed, he shouldn't have let Li Wuxia come out to train. So what if he lacked battle experience? So what if he lacked opportunities? With Li Wuxia's talent and potential, even if he cultivated step by step, he would still be able to advance to the Heaven Realm. However, remorse was useless. Li Wuxia was already dead, and remorse could not bring him back to life. His only thought was to kill the murderer. If Ouyang Wendian didn't allow him to put up a bounty for Li Fuchen, it was the same as obstructing him from taking revenge. Anyone who obstructed him from taking revenge had to die. Ouyang Wendian, we haven't fought for 10 years. I wonder how strong you are today. If you aren't a match for me, then don't leave today. If you have some ability, we can discuss this matter at length. Li Xietian didn't hide his killing intent at all. Ouyang Wendian said, bring it on, I'll return the same words to you. When did the Azure Water sect ever fear the Heaven Fiend sect in a one-on-one fight? Heaven Fiend Azura. Li Xietian roared and immediately used the 5-star secret technique, Heavenly Fiend Azura. He was already a Reincarnation realm martial artist. When he activated the 5-star secret technique, Heaven Fiend Azura, his chi presence was earth-shattering. The surrounding ground started to crack and for a moment, the void became a little blurry. Endless violent winds swept across, causing the sand and pebbles on the ground to fly. Rocks the size of millstones were blown into the sky. At the same time, a huge shadow appeared above Li Xietian. It was the innate Fiend Azura. Myriad swords returned to origin. Ouyang Wendian roared in a low voice. In the air around him, tens of thousands of strands of sword chi appeared out of nowhere, forming a forest of swords. Extinguish! Li Xietian sent a palm strike at Ouyang Wendian. The innate Fiend Azura shadow followed suit and sent a palm strike at Ouyang Wendian. The large palm strike was matched with the small palm strike, causing the void to collapse. Break! With a point of his sword art, Ouyang Wendian's surrounding sword chi blasted at the innate Fiend Azura shadow. Boom boom boom. The battle between the two of them had already surpassed the limits of combat skills. It was a clash of secret techniques. Whoever couldn't hold on would die first. There wasn't any room for tricks. 1 hour later, Ouyang Wendian had gained the upper hand. No matter how strong the innate Fiend Azura shadow was, it wouldn't be able to withstand the frenzied slashes of tens of thousands of sword chi. In the entire East Unicorn continent, the myriad swords return to origin was one of the top 10 5-star secret techniques. But the innate Fiend Azura wasn't even in the top 10. The two of them had been fighting since they were young. Back then, their strengths were about the same. But ever since the two of them cultivated their respective sects' 5-star secret techniques, Ouyang Wendian had always had the upper hand. This time was no exception. Had it not been for the Heaven Fiend sect's superior numbers of experts, the Heaven Fiend sect would always be weaker than the Azure Water sect in a one-on-one fight. What a great sect origin swords! Li Xietian tried his best to suppress his unwillingness. The Azure Water sect's sect origin swords could be said to be undefeatable. Unless one's defense was heaven-defying, there was no way to withstand it. Li Xietian, my apologies. I have one again. Ouyang Wendian spoke indifferently. Li Xietian spoke indifferently. Ouyang Wendian, aren't you afraid my Heaven Fiend sect will declare war on your Azure Water sect? I lost a son. Does your Azure Water sect want to let this matter rest? I will say the same thing. You didn't personally witness Li Fuchen killing your son. If your Heaven Fiend sect wants to declare war, then go ahead. Even if my Azure Water sect is annihilated, your Heaven Fiend sect will lose 70% to 80% of their combat strength. When the time comes, the Heaven Fiend sect will only be left with 20% to 30% of their combat strength. I think the Spirit Hidden sect will be looking for a juicy piece of meat. If it was just the Heaven Fiend sect, the Azure Water sect wouldn't be afraid. What the Azure Water sect was afraid of was the Heaven Fiend sect allying with the Spirit Hidden sect and Violent Saber sect. Fortunately, no one was foolish and knew that allying had its pros and cons. There was a saying that the fox grieves when the rabbit dies. This saying wasn't without reason. Hee, Ouyang Wendian. Sooner or later, I will eradicate your Azure Water sect. Li Xietian took a deep breath and spoke with a calm expression. I will withdraw the arrest warrant. But I cannot guarantee the safety of your Azure Water sect's disciple, Li Fuchen. After all, a place like the 100 Battle region is filled with all sorts of people. He might die in the hands of others, or he might accidentally fall to his death. These are all possibilities. Then don't let me find out that the Heaven Fiend sect is behind this. If not, your Heaven Fiend sect's gold-class direct disciple will have to be more careful when walking. Ouyang Wendian ignored the threat. After resolving the matter of Li Fuchen being wanted, Ouyang Wendian left the 100-battle region. But in the dark, he sent a message to the secret faction in the 100-battle region, asking them to pay attention to any news of Li Fuchen. Star Road Hidden Domain. 4th Star Road. Li Fuchen was drenched in sweat and his face was paler than usual. There shouldn't be any problem to barge through. Li Fuchen didn't test the limits of his potential and didn't know where his limit was. Previously, he had underestimated himself. Even though he was drenched in sweat, it wasn't his limit yet. It was just like how a regular person would perspire, but that was because of intense exercise. There was still quite a distance from his true limit. Finally, Li Fuchen saw the location of the 4th stage of the Star Road. Adjusting his chi presence, Li Fuchen stepped onto the isolated island of the 4th stage. Before Li Fuchen stepped onto the 4th stage, Han Feng had already been teleported out of the Star Road Hidden Domain. He wasn't able to block the 3rd stage's Saber of Will. This was mainly because his heart was flawed. If his heart wasn't flawed, he had a 70% to 80% chance of blocking the Saber of Will. 1 hour after Han Feng was teleported out, Xiaohoshi was also teleported out of the Star Road Hidden Domain. Right now, he was already halfway through the 4th Star Road. Chapter 233. The 4th stage tested one's comprehension of the martial Tao. The 1st stage, Roar, 2nd stage, Eye of Dreams, and 3rd stage, Saber of Will were all tests of one's spirit will. As long as one's spirit will was strong enough, one would be able to withstand it. But the 4th stage was different. This stage tested one's perception. If one's perception wasn't up to par, it didn't matter how high one's spirit will was. Of course, those with a high spirit will usually have a decent perception too. The moment Li Fuchen stepped onto the lone island, lines appeared in midair. These lines were either straight or curved, sharp or blunt, domineering or reserved, blazing or icy cold. Every line seemed to have a spirit of its own and wasn't a simple line anymore. This stage required one to combine some of the lines to form a martial art. This martial art had to be at least at the mystic class, loader. Which meant to say, Li Fuchen had to create a mystic class, low-tier martial art to pass the stage. In the outside world, those that could create mystic class, martial arts were already considered as martial Tao masters. Of course, with the help of the lines, the difficulty was actually reduced by several folds. If not, even with Li Fuchen's perception, he wouldn't dare to say he could create a mystic class, low-tier sword art. Even if he could, it would take a huge amount of time. Interesting, let's give it a try then. Li Fuchen extended a finger and began to fiddle with the lines in midair, trying to combine them. 15 minutes later, the air in front of Li Fuchen had a concentrated combination of lines. These lines combined to form the shape of a sword, which was obviously a sword art. This won't do, the grade is too low. Li Fuchen scattered the lines. This sword art was only a yellow class, peak-tier sword art and didn't meet the requirements. 15 minutes later, Li Fuchen scattered the lines again. It wasn't an easy task to create a mystic class, low-tier sword art based on the lines. After all, mystic class, martial arts contained martial Tao intent, which coincided with the heavenly Tao and was extremely mystical. 1 hour later, 2 hours later, gradually, the lines that Li Fuchen assembled began to emit a sharp intent. The sharp intent followed the will of the heavens and imperceptibly, there was a boost of energy. Endless violent winds burst out and a treasure sword that was formed by the lines was formed. This sword revolved in the violent winds and had a sharp sword intent that caused one's scalp to go numb. Mystic class, low-tier sword art, completed? Li Fuchen's eyes flashed with radiance. Creating a low-tier profound class sword art was harder than he had imagined. Fortunately, with the help of the lines, he only spent a little more than 2 hours to succeed. Let's call you High Wind Sword Art. The High Wind Sword Art contained the High Wind Sword intent. This set of sword art focused on speed and sharpness. It was proficient in fighting speed with speed. As Li Fuchen created the mystic class low-tier sword art, the high wind sword art, the lines vanished from the void. On the lone island, a monument of names appeared out of nowhere. It became a ranking? With a single glance, Li Fuchen realized that on the monument of names, the markings weren't separated into factions, but were arranged in a ranking manner. Other than the darkened marks, there were only a few dozen bright marks. It also meant that among all the surviving martial artists in the East Unicorn continent, only a few dozen of them were able to reach the 4th stage on their first attempt at the Star Road hidden domain. To be able to be listed on these marks, they are either the heroes of their generation or the geniuses of their generation. Unfortunately, I have never seen these people before and am not familiar with their auras. That is why I am unable to tell who these marks represent. On the East Unicorn continent, there were plenty of experts. When these experts were young, they were all prodigies. And to be able to be listed on the 4th stage's monument of names, they were all absolute prodigies when they were young. If they weren't 6-star bone frames, they would be heaven-defying 5-star bone frames. Like the Azure Water sect patriarch, Ouyang Wenyan. When he was young, he was a prodigy like Sword Maniac and Sword Tiger. It was a pity that he wasn't qualified to be listed on the 4th stage's monument of names. Li Fuchen reckoned that the Celestial Star sect patriarch, Dolin clan's current patriarch, Eternal Spring Valley patriarch, and other elite forces leaders should be listed on this list. In Li Fuchen's information, these people were either 6-star bone frames or heaven-defying 5-star bone frames. The darkened marks don't have any ranking. Only the bright marks have rankings. I wonder what rank my mark will be. Wielding the brush of names, Li Fuchen began to draw his own sword mark in the void. The sword mark was formed in a single stroke and flew towards the monument of names. 3rd place, 2nd place. Once Li Fuchen's sword mark was formed, it immediately flew to the 3rd place and began to climb the ranks. 1st place. Surpassing the 1st place. Li Fuchen's sword mark was extremely dominant. It forcefully pushed the original 1st place down and took over the 1st place. The original 1st place mark naturally wasn't convinced and frantically attacked the sword mark. A violent spirit will and mystical wave, as though it had a spirit of its own, enveloped Li Fuchen's sword mark. Li Fuchen's sword mark wasn't to be trifled with either. It similarly burst out with spirit will and mystical wave as it started to attack. Li Fuchen was watching from the side with interest. After multiple attacks, the original 1st place mark couldn't take it anymore. It obediently retreated back to the 2nd place and didn't dare to challenge the sword mark anymore. As such, Li Fuchen's sword mark was firmly branded on the monument of names. The monument of names radiated with a bright light. A beam of light rushed into the sky and penetrated the starry sky. No one knew how long this beam of light was. Its length had already exceeded common sense and seemed to be comparable with the entire Star Road. Rumble. In the starry sky, countless golden lightning streaked across the sky. When the marks were left on the 3rd stage's monument of names, the golden lightning was a few hundred or a few thousand miles long. But now, these golden lightning were a few thousand or even tens of thousands of miles long. There were a few that were a few 100,000 miles long. Streaks of golden lightning skimmed across the Star Road. Even Li Fuchen had a feeling of fear and insignificance. For the lightning to reach such a length, if it is real, a single lightning bolt would probably be able to destroy the East Unicorn continent. A golden lightning that was a few thousand or tens of thousands of miles was already enough to destroy the world. A lightning that was a few 100,000 miles long, if it was real, who would be able to withstand it? The golden lightning wasn't just extremely long, it was also very thick. The power contained within was indescribable. Boom! There was a soundless ripple. A distant star was half destroyed by a single lightning bolt. Such a scene made Li Fuchen speechless for a long time. After passing the 4th stage, a total of 8 portions of Star Road's power was added onto Li Fuchen's body. Right now, Li Fuchen had a total of 15 portions of Star Road's power. Such boundless Star Road's power gave Li Fuchen a feeling of discomfort if he didn't break through. It seems like I have to break through the cultivation realm. Li Fuchen sat cross-legged and prepared to break through to the 4th level of the Earth realm. Circulating the true Inferno technique, Li Fuchen's chi presence surged with blazing heat. Boom! In less than 15 minutes, Li Fuchen broke through. He broke through from the 3rd level of the Earth realm to the 4th level of the Earth realm. Furthermore, his chi didn't have any trace of weakness and was abnormally stable. It was much more stable than when he relied on the earth-shattering fruit to break through. It seemed as though he had been at the 4th level of the Earth realm for a long time. At the same moment, Li Fuchen Star Road's power was depleted by 3 portions. I should be able to break through to the 5th level of the Earth realm. Li Fuchen continued to break through and tossed a large quantity of pills into his mouth. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation, audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.